Hello, I'm Steve, and in this episode, we're talking with my friend Willijah Dawson and host of the Raised by Woman podcast, where she explores how experience shapes the way we live, love, and lead, and how the shifts happening internally often change the way we work and show up in the world. Raised by Woman is a storytelling podcast about becoming, legacy, and the influences shaping the patterns we carry. Through conversations across generations and lived experiences, the show explores the women who influenced us, the moments we redirected our lives, and the relationships that quietly shape how we live, love, and lead. Each episode invites listeners to recognize the unseen patterns shaping their choices, identity, and direction. Guests share personal stories, inherited wisdom, and insights still unfolding, revealing how legacy is shaped one story at a time. I really enjoyed spending this time with Willijah, kind of turning the tables to hear more about her personal journey and the inspirational women in her life. I also enjoy listening to the Raised by Woman podcast and the testimonials shared by her guests, and I know you will too. Let me know in the comments and check the details in the description below to subscribe to the Raised by Woman podcast. And now I invite you to my discussion with Willijah Dawson. All right. Well, I want to start by saying hello, Willijah, and thank you so much for joining us on the Self Sovereignty YouTube channel. I'm really excited to have an opportunity to speak with you. The last time we spoke, I was actually being interviewed on your channel, and so I was answering lots of questions, but I really didn't get an opportunity to really kind of dig into what you're doing and with your podcast and all of your online activities.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. So happy to be here. It's interesting to be on this side of the house here. So thank you. Thanks for inviting me. So yeah, it's a long story. We've got some time, right?
Let's do it. Yes. Yeah, let's unpack it.
Yeah, so just a brief introduction as far as who I am, what I do. So Willijah is my name. People always ask me what's the inspiration behind it. My father's name was Willie, and then my mom loved the name Elijah. If I were a boy, that's what she was going to name me. So she took the Will and Elijah. So yes,
Love
just
that.
thought I'd do that because I always get asked the question. And then I do work a 9 to 5. So I am a professional. I do work as in the product management space for a financial insurance company. I work in the IT department, project planning, writing epics features, all this stuff. So that's my trade. That's what I do by day. And on the side, I'm calling it my passion project here, Raised by Women. And as far as the story behind it and why I started Raised by Women, it's a long one. So it all started, I like to think of my life and looking back, and I know we can all relate to this. We all have a similar story. We all have the things we've gone through in our life. But I love the framework of the hero's journey by Joseph Campbell. He penned it. He's got a whole book, and really look into it. I know this isn't the space to go into like what the hero's journey is and all of that. But at the highest level, I'll just say what it is. It's like in life, as human beings, we all go through a very similar experience. You know, it's just a certain path we set out to follow, and then it's just the highs and the lows that come with life and takes us off course, and then we have to start all over again and all of that. I love the framework of Hero's Journey, but I also think of like Pilgrim's Progress. I don't know if you've ever heard of Pilgrim's Progress, but it just in life, I feel like we all go through some sort of journey. So that's kind of why I started the podcast. I wanted to capture people's journey and their story. It was inspired by my story, and where it began for me is when I was 18, you know, fresh, new adult, fresh out of school and all of that, ready to start life. I had a plan to work in the medical field. I've always had a love for health and wellness. And I was like, I want to work in the wellness field. And I had this whole plan to go to school, become a nurse, eventually become a nurse practitioner, and then figure out life from there, you know, do the typical path of get married, have children, and all of that. Definitely did not happen at all. I don't even have children yet. So it did not happen for me at all. So when I worked, I worked in a nursing home. I was on a path to have the nursing home paid for my tuition and go on to become a nurse. I was actually registered to go to school January timeframe in, was it 2006 now? I think it was like 2021. And I ended up getting let go from the job. They
Mm.
laid me off for a silly error. I used to work bedside with a resident, and overnight I'd use their phone. This was before we had iPhones and what we have today. And I was calling my boyfriend on the phone, and there ended up being a bill because I had a long distance number, and they terminated it for me.
Mm.
And it was just like, oh, I'm only like 2021. It was, could have been just a slap on the hand, whatever. But anyway, I now am looking back in retrospect and just how life panned out for me. I know it was the start of my journey. It was like a start of a journey of, okay, well, that didn't work out for you. What's next? What am I going to do with my life? I ended up getting the job I have today, still with the company 20 years later. And I that ended up closing that door, but I ended up going down this path. I didn't really quite get to where I wanted to be from a career standpoint, but during the last 20 years, there was so much that's happened in my life. I went from caring for three grandparents. I cared for two grandmothers and a grandfather until their passing. I did entrepreneurial endeavors. I helped family members start a business. I helped my brother start a business. We got that up and going in the community as not an online business. It's an actual brick and mortar. Well,
Mhm.
we're working with clients and customers locally. So I helped him get that going. I lost a niece to suicide.
Oh,
And
sorry to hear that.
yeah, in 2017, so had that whole journey of navigating grief and loss and thinking I was going to be superwoman and I was going to help my sister start a nonprofit to do something in my niece's memory. So that was a part of my journey. I've been in a 25-year relationship. That's always a fun part of one's journey, to be with somebody that long. So, in saying all that, it was just all these little paths that I had to go down and explore. And really, when I look back and just kind of put all the pieces together, I realized it was my story of becoming, my story of trying to realize what I'm meant to do in life. Because throughout this whole process, I was like, what's my purpose? What am I supposed to do in life? And I had all these things going on with working full time, going to school. I got my master's degree, starting these businesses, helping family members, doing all the stuff. And I know it was maybe 5, 10 years ago, or right with the pandemic. The pandemic was really a wake up call for me.
Mhm.
The pandemic comes and I had all these moving, I like to think of these things like balls in the air. I had all these balls in the air of all the different things that I'm working throughout my 20s and my 30s. And so when the pandemic came, I was like everyone, we're all forced to kind of stop everything you're doing. Your life kind of goes on pause.
Right. Yeah.
Right before this had happened, one of the pieces, and I know this is all over the place because there's a lot of things that happened over the 20 years. But right before the pandemic hit, we were in the process of building the nonprofit with my sister after the loss of my niece. And we had an opportunity to work with three very large nonprofit organizations. They were working on a national campaign for mental health. And
Mhm.
I remember showing up to this meeting. It was during the first year of that pandemic. Folks that were supposed to be in the meeting did not attend. I was by myself. And it started raising questions between that and my relationship. Like, why are you doing all of these things? What is the point of all of this? And so I had to pause on a lot of things. The pandemic caused the pause, and then just in life. And it started me going down a road of reflection, like inner reflection, what one might call a spiritual awakening, and really reflecting on all the activities and things that I was doing. What one would call a family martyr, trying to save everyone in the family, feeling like I needed to be that person for everyone, all while caring for my grandparents. And then also going through this loss that my family had gone through. And I just realized a lot of my reaction and how I carried myself in life was trauma responses.
Hmm.
It was a need to feel like I had to help everyone, I had to save everyone. You'll get to some of the things you might want to do later on in life, like have a family. Let's just make sure the whole family is good and everything else is good. And and through that period of my life where I just had to sit there and really reflect on my life's journey, um, I realized, or I started asking my questions. Okay, you've been doing everything for everyone else. What do you actually really want out of life? And I remembered how I was initially on my original path, was drawn to wellness and really did want to work in the medical field. I was like, well, how can I take that? And got into like human design and like all of these things to try to put all the pieces together and make sense of my life. I will say a common thread throughout my entire life was caretaking. It was caring for my grandparents, my grandmother, who inspired Raised by Women. And it was the realization over the last 7 years that there was a lot of trauma, ancestral even. I
Hmm.
am Native American, African American, like I have, so and then losing a niece to suicide, that it was just like kind of trying to figure out, what is my purpose? What do I want to do with my life? How do I take my life experience and make it into something meaningful? And then when I look at the lives of my grandmothers, like how can I take their story and really make something out of it? And that all of that combined inspired Raised by Women, because I thought about the fact of, the loss and the grief that my family's gone through. My father was an alcoholic, drug addict, so there was a lot of trauma there with my father, and having an absent father. He actually died because of alcohol that took his life. And then I was just looking at how that, um, my niece and losing my niece and the trauma that the family carried. And then I was thinking about like how women, like my single household families, there was never any, I can't, unfortunately, I don't have any good influences in my life to show me what a healthy relationship looks like. So I made it a point, like, I want to have a healthy relationship anyway. So, anyways, I was just thinking about how it's the people before us that condition who we end up becoming. And then it's up to us to realize, recognize, make changes in your life, and then move forward and figure out what your purpose is in life, and then just really move forward with it. So I know that was a a lot
There's
of
a,
information.
yeah, a lot of information, but it's great because, it's like the universe, you knew what you wanted, but it's like the universe says, you're not ready yet, you
Yes.
know? And I find that often, where it's like you come back to what really is in your heart and your soul, but when you come back, you have the right experience, the right tools, you've gone through the right types of experiences, that you can then be of true value to others, and find your way along the way as well.
Yes, so true. And you are right. It was like a combination. And I see what you're saying, because it is interesting how life prepares you for the work you're meant to do, essentially. It's
Yes. Yeah.
you, the experiences and the tools and all of that that you need, that you can take forward and then give back. Because I do believe in the power of, what is that quote? I heard it was by Muhammad Ali. And then I also heard Jet Li. I don't know who the originator of the quote is, but service to humanity is the service, or is the rent you pay for being on earth, or something
I
along
love
those
that.
lines.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think it's important to, take it, or I feel like life does prepare you for whatever your purpose work is meant to be.
So you started the podcast a year ago or a couple of years ago?
Oh, that's a good question. I know it's
Yeah.
interesting. I rebranded it. I
Okay.
initially started it 2 years ago. And this was part of those 7 years after the pandemic. Like, what do I want to do with my life? And like kind of throwing spaghetti at the wall and playing around with different ideals and all of that. And I have like all these certifications and trainings and MBA and all this stuff. So I'm like, how do I bring it all and put all of it together, the
Hmm.
experience, everything? So, in answer to your question, it initially started 2 years ago. The podcast has gone through several name changes. Initially, I was not broadcasting it. I was treating it more like, let me just put it out there. If somebody hears it, amazing. If not, that's fine too. It's just more of a way to document and share my learnings and reflections on different topics. So if you go back and look at my older episodes, you'll notice that a lot of that was just more, reflection on personal growth and development and all of that. So the original podcast name went through a couple of names. It was like Aligning Empathy, because I was thinking about my corporate experience and how we lack empathy sometime in leadership positions. So I was thinking about that initially. Then it was like Be a Woman to Remember. And I'm thinking about the legacy that my grandparents left. They
Mhm.
didn't have we come from poverty, so my family had nothing substantial or anything to leave for me, but what they did leave was character. So I was like thinking about that, and like I had just lost my grandmother. I took care of three of them. Two died in 2015. I was primary. When I say I took care of, I was their primary caretaker.
Right.
Last grandmother that was living, she had like a colonoscopy. I used to be there every week, changing it, doing all this stuff. So she died, and it was Be a Woman to Remember. I was thinking about my grandmother. I was like, my grandmother is just this amazing matriarchal figure in the family, was the backbone essentially mentally for the entire family. And then playing around, tweaking and refining, and then the ideal of Raised by Women came to me. So Raised by a Woman was rebranded back in January of this year, where I started doing the interviews based around that framework.
Gotcha. Okay. And so it's really a culmination of your experiences, your family background,
Yes.
that's kind of like driving the podcast and the content for that. Do you have like specific family traditions or family values or that you now have taken away from your family that you keep, close dear to your heart that you move forward with, things that, you either, traditional values that you instill and cultivate, for yourself moving forward or for your extended family, and then also into your podcast.
Amazing question. So yes, unfortunately, my family was not very traditional and as far as having and holding a bunch of traditions, like where we like on this day every year we're gonna all come together and do this exercise, like nothing like that. But what we did have growing up, my grandmother, one of my grandmothers, amazing cook, like the best cook
Mm,
ever. So like holidays, of course, we'd come together, Thanksgiving and all of that. And I just, whenever I think of food, great food, best cook ever, literally is my grandmother. So I will say, thankfully, a lot of my sisters and I feel we did inherit some of that gift. We all love to
yeah.
cook. So we actually did actually 2 years ago, we started a tradition in her memory for her birthday. Like every year on her birthday, we come together. So it was like it was with her, and then I'm also like we've done some things and after the loss of my niece. So a tradition that I'm working to establish in our family. It's not quite grounded yet, but a tradition I'm working to establish is a memory day of the people we love and lost, like get together, have a dinner, cook some of their favorite foods, and light candles, bring your photo albums, and really just talk about and honor the people we've lost. So
I
that's
love
one.
that. Yeah. And that's so important, because, you mentioned your sisters, we all have our unique memories of our parents and,
Mhm.
and siblings that have gone. And so that's great to get together and kind of talk through those because, um, my relationship with my brother that's deceased is completely different than those relationships of, sorry about that,
Oh, that's okay.
of my siblings. And so to be able to share those experience, that just extends the love of those that we've lost. It gives us a better foundational understanding, I feel.
No, it really does. It truly does. Like having hold space. I think it's important. In some
Yeah,
cultures, they honor the
yeah,
dead. It's so
yeah,
important to hold that space. And you asked about the podcast as well. That is a question I do like to ask guests, like what are traditions you house or have? Because
hmm
after losing my grandparents and being with them, I took care of two of them for 10 years. And then my latest grandmother, who died in the beginning of 2024, I took care of her for about 6 years. And so the things that I wish I had from
Yeah.
those experiences was more photo albums, more capturing or them capturing like recipes in a recipe book and putting together like scrapbooks that they could give to us so we can like see the different events in their story of becoming in life. So those are things that I wish that I had from my grandparents and things that I hope to like capture in the show is some of that nostalgia.
Okay. So then with your podcast, what how would you describe like the overall purpose or the mission of the podcast?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say really it's just the story of becoming, like really capturing folks' hero's journey
Yeah.
and
Okay.
the journey they go through, and then how their past, even like not just their parents, but like grandparents, like the ancestral
Mhm.
influences, how the past influences who they become and how that helps them become the leaders that they want to be, like, learning, basically shaping yourself or taking your story of becoming to help you then define your position as a leader in the work that you do, whether you're working at corporate or in business or whatever. So just, I would say that that's my overall
Okay.
objective.
That's beautiful. I love that. Yeah. And then what's your criteria? Well, like when you're looking for a guest for your podcast, I mean, what are you looking for to kind of solidify that goal, that mission of your podcast?
Yeah, so I usually want folks to bring stories of the matriarchal influences that they've had in their life, and then really think about, so usually I'll ask guests, like, do you have stories of matriarchal influences that you want to share on the show? So that's usually one of my questions. And then just what was the life, I guess, the pivotal moment in your life, when your life completely changed. So usually I'll start off with that as well. So
Yeah.
it's really just capturing the matriarchal influences and then the pivotal moments in their life that completely changed their life.
Yeah. I love that. And then with respect to like general takeaways for your audience, I guess it differs for each individual that you have on the podcast, but like just in keeping with kind of your core objectives to move the podcast forward, and to put it out there for your intended audiences.
Yeah, so my goal or my hope for anyone that's listening to the show is for them to really think about their hero's journey, really think about how their life has prepared them for the role that they're in today, and
Mhm.
then really think about how they can take those experiences and do good and put out good in the world, going back to that statement around the service, to humanity is the rent we pay for being here on earth. So really just thinking about what was your past, what was those influences, how do those define who you've become? If you haven't thought about it, do the work to figure those pieces out. And then
Yeah.
once you've kind of taken that picture, now how do I move forward and how do I incorporate my value into the world or my life experience into leadership? Like, oh, yeah, I need to be more empathetic at work. I'm in a leadership role. How could I really think about the team and the growth of my company? Or you've got a business, like, how can I, shape my business around my core values, things
Mhm.
like so that's my goal. I'm hoping people can see themselves in the stories, really think about the work they might need to do if they haven't yet, and then really take it into the work they do going forward.
I like that because it really is asking them to step back, think about their background, where they came from, their influences in their life, and really kind of pull those positive experiences, lean into that positive energy of their experiences, and move forward to especially if they're going through trauma or they've just gone through some kind of a trauma, personal or work related or whatever. It gives them something to kind of draw from to help move forward incrementally.
Mm-hmm. It does. And I think it's important too, because maybe sometimes people, and I know with the work you do as well, people don't realize, there's something blocking them or holding them back. And I know a lot of people will say, well, we don't want to get caught up on it and be stuck on your trauma. And I agree. But it's more so recognizing, like, how they say the first step to change is awareness.
Yep.
So it's like
Yeah.
really making sure you have that awareness. Maybe I know I did work with Mark Wolin. I did some of his trainings, and Mark Wolin, he's the author of It Doesn't Start With You. But a lot of times when folks are sitting there at his chair, they're having all these symptoms and all these things going on, autoimmune diseases, whatever. They just have something going on in their life and they don't quite know or understand why, but they never really took the time to really reflect on their story. They never really took the time to reflect on the things and the patterns that were being passed down from the generations before them. They're holding stuff like the stories Mark Wolin tells is so powerful. He tells so many stories of individuals and patients he's worked with who might have some illness that shows up at a certain age and they don't know what's wrong with them. And then when they really sit back and they diagnose and look at their life history and what they've gone through, they realize like their grandparent had gone through something at their age and they're now carrying that. And once they have recognition that, oh wow, something that I'm carrying that, okay, now I realize that. Now I'm going to change. So now I have awareness and now I'm going to make the change. So yeah, I just think it's important or that's my goal for listeners to really think about their story and uncover those things and then take those lessons and moving forward.
Yeah, and I love that because there is so much that we carry at that subconscious level.
And it's the awareness too, because he even in one of the trainings I know he talked about like you're almost like with the work that folks do when they are trauma informed is, being almost like a midwife to kind of figure
Mm.
out what is that issue, more so for awareness, because maybe once you're aware, you're like, okay, I know what it is. Now I can move forward. But it's like a hidden ghost that's just hanging out there till you have awareness of it, in a sense.
Yeah, definitely. So where do you want to go forward with the podcast and do you have other consulting services or books, things like that you want to talk about?
Yeah, I will talk a little bit about those things. So thank you for asking. I will say, oh, I know a lot of folks are like, well, what is your aim? What is your purpose? And why are you doing
Yeah.
it? So I will say ultimately, I'm going to share this publicly now. I'll just say it. I am writing a book,
Awesome.
and a book inspired by my family story. So my goal ultimately is to get the book published. We'll see how that goes. I don't know how long it'll take, but that's, where I'm at. And then just so my ultimate goal is this is just it's really my baby is really the way I look at it. I just love the work. It's something I know I'm meant to do. I'm into human design and
Hmm.
all this stuff. It actually aligns perfectly with my chart. It's just I'm just capturing folks' story of becoming and transforming and doing work that's purposeful in the world eventually as a result of once you know your story, it then and like you said, once you've gone through the journey, you know your story, you really sit with your story for a while and then you really think about what it is that you're meant to do in this world. It's you're able to better I guess where I'm going with this is I want to help people through that transition. That's my ultimate goal. It's like helping folks look at their story and make sense of their story and then eventually do work that aligns with their gifts. So I would say as far as where I'm going, it's writing the book and then eventually coaching and consulting.
Is there anything else that you want to add for viewers?
Yeah, I would just say yeah, like a word of wisdom or
Yeah.
I've
Sure.
used this one before. It's my favorite one and I come back to it over and over and over again, but I think it's just something people have to be reminded of is the woman who heals herself heals the woman before her and after, and that applies to men too. So
Mm.
it's just the healing that you do is really it does I believe in it going forward and backwards. So it's just an important reminder I often need to hear just to remind myself why I'm doing this. Because sometimes I'm like, why am I doing this? I go back and forth. But I think it's just important for people to be reminded that the work for healing or whatnot is not just for yourself. It's for your family and it's for the humanity. Ultimately, if you're a better contributor to humanity, our world could
Yeah. Yeah, and I agree, and I love that because we tend to not do the self-care because we are taking care of others,
Yes.
and we're so busy we lose track of that in the, day to day and, all of our busy schedules and stuff. But if we don't do that, we don't have that solid foundation that we need to be there for others, to be able to show up with unconditional love for others, um, to be there and not necessarily always get um, involved or take ownership in what they're going through, but to be aware of what they're going through, to provide sympathy and empathy and be there to support unconditionally. And I think that's where one of the biggest challenges that folks have. We're so busy right now. We're so stressed out. We don't take that time, and it doesn't take a whole lot of time, to be honest. Um,
No,
from a healing perspective, there are things that you can do to strengthen yourself and to align yourself with that divine purpose, and those intentions. And once you do that, you have a solid foundation to support the others around you that are needed.
so
Yeah.
true.
Yeah.
True.
So I've got one final question. What will your life legacy be?
Oh, that's a good one. And thanks to my grandmother, I uh I thought a lot about this one. So definitely being the woman, I guess if you would, who was a solid matriarchal influence for her family
Mhm.
and potentially the community, or I would say the world, but that's being audacious. I would say the world, but with the work that I'm doing now, I do want to have a positive impact and remind folks of what's important, what's valuable, really having some of that old school wisdom that
Mhm.
we're losing. So I hope to be remembered for that, for someone who was the solid matriarchal influence in her family and also a good contributor to society.
I love that. And I would say don't be afraid to put that out into the universe. You
Yeah,
know,
I
that's
will.
important. That's important because the universe is listening, you know,
Yeah,
and put it out there as this is who I am, so that you're already living that experience,
so
you
true.
know.
So
Yeah.
yeah, Maya Angelou is someone who's inspired me. So
Yeah. So I'll definitely, get some links that we can add to the show notes and stuff. But I really appreciate you taking time to meet with us. I think that I hopefully I'd love to see your podcast grow. Like I said, you've got some great interviews on there, and I just think that it's a wealth of information for individuals. And so I wish you all the best with that. And I'm so excited that you took time to meet with me today.
thank you. Thank you so much, Steve, for having me. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Absolutely. Yep.
All
We'll
right.
take